The London Underground breaks down multiple times a day. Hospital emergency rooms, 4-hour wait to see a doctor. The pound sterling, once worth $5, now trades at $1.27. In 2022, Britain cycled through 3 prime ministers in 1 year. Liz Truss lasted 49 days, famously outlasted by a head of lettuce. Not a developing nation, not a failed state. This is the United Kingdom in 2026. But the empire that once ruled a quarter of the Earth's landmass, the nation where the sun never set, is falling apart. Not suddenly, slowly, structurally. For 200 years after the Industrial Revolution, Britain stood at the center of the world. It built the financial systems that run global trade. It invented the technologies that powered modern civilization. But today, Britain shows no economic vitality, no political cohesion, no energy. Brexit severed its access to European markets. Energy costs are strangling what's left of industry. Growth has flatlined. Young people see no future. Britain now faces 4 insurmountable walls: climate transition costs, an aging population, bloated welfare systems, and industrial decline. And the nation that created the modern world is running out of time. Britain's decline began with Brexit. In 2020, the UK officially left the European Union. The promise was simple: take back control, restore sovereignty, build global Britain. The reality? Economic isolation. After exiting the EU single market, British exporters faced new tariffs and complex administrative procedures. London's financial hub, once the gateway to Europe, began losing business to Frankfurt and Paris. Manufacturing took a direct hit from global supply chain restructuring. Britain's most glaring weakness, the productivity puzzle, worsened after Brexit. For over 15 years, labor productivity has stagnated. Private investment rates have fallen to the lowest among major developed nations. The global Britain Brexit promise never materialized. What remained was uncertainty, inflation, and declining living standards. Wage growth couldn't keep pace with prices. Youth housing costs hit the highest level since the 1980s. The stable middle class, once the symbol of the British Empire, is disappearing. What happened to the nation once called the empire on which the sun never sets? Britain's decline didn't start with dramatic statistics. It started in the daily lives of ordinary people. The London Underground, built 150 years ago, breaks down several times a day. The system was never properly maintained. Passenger numbers increased while infrastructure crumbled. To see a doctor at an NHS hospital emergency room, the average wait is 4 hours. Medical staff shortages mean even minor illnesses now involve weeks-long waits for care. Behind these daily breakdowns lies a fundamental structural shift in the British economy. Since the 1980s, Britain abandoned manufacturing and bet everything on finance. Factories closed, coal mines shut down. In their place, London emerged as a global financial center. Aside from luxury brands like Bentley and Rolls-Royce, it's nearly impossible to find British-made products that ordinary people use. The problem? Finance depended on the European Union, a massive market. A financial company licensed in London could operate across all of Europe without additional approval. This is called the financial passport. Over 70% of European financial transactions flowed through London. Then, in 2016, Britons voted to leave the European Union in a referendum. Brexit, a combination of Britain and exit, meant the UK's withdrawal from the EU. Global investment banks immediately began preparing to leave London. JP Morgan announced it would move operations to Germany. Goldman Sachs declared plans to expand in France. Then COVID-19 delivered the final blow. In 2020, Britain's economy contracted. Recovery lagged behind other developed nations. The limits of the NHS, the National Health Service, were brutally exposed. The NHS is Britain's free healthcare system, funded by taxes, allowing all citizens to receive treatment without cost. But budget shortages and staff deficits paralyzed the system. Political instability further eroded economic confidence. In 2022 alone, Britain had 3 prime ministers. Liz Truss resigned after just 49 days, famously outlasted by a head of lettuce in a Daily Star stunt. The pound fell to its lowest level since 1985. Inflation hit a 40-year high. In 2024, Keir Starmer's Labour government took power, but the structural problems remain unsolved. But this crisis didn't appear suddenly. In the 19th century, Britain built the most powerful empire in human history. Britain's geographic position made everything possible. An island nation just across the sea from continental Europe, this location gave birth to the empire. The ocean was a shield against invasion and a highway to the world. By the mid-19th century, Britain's imperial power was unimaginable. Its territory covered a quarter of the Earth's landmass. From Canada to Australia, from India to South Africa, The sun truly never set on British soil. It was a perfect system: extract raw materials from colonies, process them in Britain, then sell finished goods back to the colonies. The textile industry is the classic example. Cotton from India was processed in Manchester factories, then exported worldwide. Under the gold standard, currency value was determined by gold weight. 1 pound equaled 113 grains of gold. $1 equaled 23 grains. A grain is a unit of gold weight measurement. The pound was worth $5. The world effectively operated on the British pound. London was the center of global finance. But later, the world's financial center shifted to New York. The Industrial Revolution also began in Britain. In the 18th century, the steam engine and textile machinery enabled mass production. Britain became the world's factory. British products spread across the globe. Britain virtually monopolized railway and steamship technology. Other nations had no choice but to depend on British technology to build railroads or ships. But this system had a fatal flaw. Britain relied too heavily on colonial exploitation, causing technological innovation at home to fall behind. By the late 19th century, when the United States and Germany surged ahead in electricity, chemistry, and steel, Britain's dominance began to shake. The nation that started the Industrial Revolution was ironically slow to adapt to new changes. 2 world wars dealt devastating blows to the British economy. To finance the wars, Britain had to sell off massive overseas assets. It fell from a creditor nation, lending money to others, to a debtor nation, borrowing from others. Simultaneously, colonies began declaring independence one by one. By the early 1960s, most colonies had gained independence. The empire on which the sun never set disappeared into history. The British Commonwealth, a loose union, remained, but it carried more symbolic than practical value. 56 nations participate, representing a quarter of the world's population, but actual economic cooperation fell short of expectations. Even core countries like Canada and Australia began prioritizing relationships with the United States and Asia over Britain. Britain needed to find a new path. In 1979, as Britain searched for direction after losing its empire, Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady, emerged. When she became Prime Minister, Britain became a completely different country. Her famous statement, "There is no such thing as society," wasn't mere political rhetoric. It was a revolutionary declaration. To overcome the British disease of economic stagnation, everything would be left to the market. The British disease refers to the severe economic stagnation Britain experienced in the 1970s. Strikes became routine. Economic growth stopped while prices kept rising. Even garbage collectors went on strike, causing trash to pile up like mountains in London streets. Power supply was unstable. Electricity was available only 3 days a week. The once mighty British Empire had become a sick giant. Thatcher's first choice was to sell all state-owned enterprises to private companies. Railways, electricity, gas, telecommunications, all core national facilities were privatized. Simultaneously, she closed coal mines on a massive scale, the symbol of British industry. In 1984, miners fought a year-long strike, risking their lives. Thatcher didn't bend. Tens of thousands of miners lost their jobs. Coal towns became ruins. Instead of manufacturing, Thatcher bet everything on finance. In 1986, she launched the financial revolution called the Big Bang. The Big Bang meant complete financial market liberalization. Securities trading commissions were fully deregulated. Foreign financial firms could operate freely in London. The ambitious plan, make London a global financial hub rivaling New York. As a result, from the 1980s through the 1990s, London exploded with growth. Financial industry salaries skyrocketed. Investment banks, hedge funds, and insurance companies from around the world flocked to London. Hedge funds are investment companies pursuing high risk and high returns. Finance's share of the British economy exceeded 10%, higher than manufacturing, but the price was brutal. As manufacturing disappeared, regional cities died one by one. Traditional industrial cities like Liverpool, Manchester, and Glasgow saw unemployment exceed 20%. Meanwhile, London and the southeast boomed with finance, causing property prices to soar. The middle class began crumbling. Wealth inequality expanded rapidly. The dangers of a finance-centered economy became immediately apparent. During the 1992 European currency crisis, speculators attacked the pound, causing it to collapse. Britain lost billions of pounds in a single day. They were helpless against financial powers like George Soros. Without the solid pillar of manufacturing, absorbing financial market volatility became impossible. Thatcher also drastically cut welfare programs. She reduced unemployment benefits and halted public housing construction. Instead, she promised to make everyone a shareholder by selling privatized company stocks to ordinary citizens at discounts. This marked the beginning of shareholder capitalism. Shareholder capitalism is an economic system prioritizing the interests of company-owning shareholders above all else. These changes completely rewrote Britain's social DNA. A culture emerged valuing individual over community, private property over public goods, efficiency over security, but simultaneously, wealth inequality widened dramatically. From the 1990s through the early 2000s, Britain enjoyed a second golden age based on Thatcher's financial revolution. Daily transactions in London exceeded $5 trillion, surpassing New York. Major financial firms from around the world chose London as their European base. Its perfect time zone connected Asia and the United States. When Asian markets closed, London opened. When London closed, New York opened. London was the center of a 24-hour financial network. The Canary Wharf district in East London symbolized this era. In the 1980s, this was a desolate dock. One by one, skyscrapers rose. Global investment banks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Deutsche Bank competed to establish European headquarters there. By the mid-2000s, office rents here matched Manhattan. A ruined dock had transformed into the heart of global finance. Finance's success lifted all of Britain. In 2007, Britain's per capita income exceeded $40,000, surpassing Germany and France. London real estate soared alongside. In upscale neighborhoods like Chelsea and Kensington, property values rose 20% annually. The British government's coffers overflowed. Financial companies and their employees paid taxes accounting for 1/5 of total revenue. With this money, Tony Blair's Labour government dramatically increased investment in education and healthcare. This was called the Third Way, maintaining Thatcher's neoliberal policies while expanding welfare. Neoliberalism is an economic philosophy advocating minimal government intervention and leaving everything to market principles. The EU single market was Britain's greatest gift. Thanks to the special financial passport system, companies licensed in London could operate freely anywhere in Europe. London's appeal, loose regulations, and English language was overwhelming. Over 70% of European financial transactions passed through London. Graduates from Oxford and Cambridge, plus Americans from Harvard and Stanford, all flocked to London. London's financial district became a dream stage for talent. Britain's export structure completely changed. Factory-made product exports declined, but financial service exports more than compensated. Britain sold premium services like insurance, investment advice, and asset management to the world, especially governments and businesses in rapidly growing emerging economies like Brazil, India, and China borrowed money and received investment advice in London. But all this glory rested on one condition: free access to the European Union's massive market. Yet behind the financial industry's glamorous success, the lives of ordinary Britons were quietly crumbling. From the late 2000s, public services began noticeably deteriorating. The most directly felt area was the free NHS healthcare service Britons once took pride in. Even for simple illnesses like colds, waits of several weeks became common. Seeing specialists required months of waiting. The London Underground, with 150-year-old tracks and signal facilities never properly repaired, saw ridership increase while breakdowns became routine. The housing problem grew even more desperate. As London property prices soared endlessly, buying a home became a dream, even for professionals in their 30s. Rent consumed over half of monthly income, and even then meant sharing cramped old rooms with multiple people. Education also divided by class. Those earning big money in finance sent children to private schools, costing £50,000 annually. Average families had no choice but to rely on public schools. But as government cut budgets, public school facilities became increasingly inadequate. Half of students entering prestigious universities like Oxford came from private schools. Inequality of opportunity was being inherited. In provincial areas, only low-wage jobs like convenience stores and fast food remained where factories once stood. In former industrial cities like Liverpool and Manchester, young people left for London one by one. Cities once proud symbols of British manufacturing became symbols of decline. Even within Britain, the gap between London and the provinces widened to developing nation levels. In this situation, people's anger accumulated. Financial industry workers' discontent also grew. Despite receiving massive bonuses, their real income was actually declining. Especially during the 2008 Lehman Brothers financial crisis, the government bailed out failed banks with taxpayer money while telling ordinary citizens to tighten their belts. The contradictory situation: bank executives received bonuses while ordinary people paid more taxes to rescue those banks. Their anger also turned toward immigrant workers. Workers who had migrated from countries like Poland and Romania primarily worked low-wage jobs in construction and cleaning. Existing British workers complained of a double burden: wages not rising because of these workers' lower pay, plus losing jobs. British media led the charge in blaming immigrants from Europe as the culprits of Britain's problems. They explained complex economic issues through the simple framework of foreigners' fault, directing public anger in a specific direction. Politicians also began exploiting this sentiment. This accumulated discontent and anger would produce an explosive result that would go down in British history. On June 23, 2016, the Brexit referendum was held. The result, contrary to many predictions, was 51.9% to 48.1% in favor. The day after the results, the British pound plunged over 10%. The stock market dropped 8%. Abandoning free trade with the massive European market meant the game rules of the economy itself were changing. Especially for Britain, where finance is core, this was an enormous shock. Losing the financial passport privilege meant business targeting all of Europe from London would become impossible. The status as a financial hub built over 40 years was shaking overnight. Global financial firms reacted immediately. JP Morgan announced major expansion of its Frankfurt office. Goldman Sachs declared it would seriously consider entering Paris. Deutsche Bank said it would move 4,000 London employees to Germany. The European Central Bank pressured firms to move euro-related operations from London to continental Europe. Conversely, China didn't miss this opportunity. China had been trying to develop Shanghai and Hong Kong as global financial hubs. London's fall was a golden chance. The Chinese government actively recruited financial firms leaving London. The yuan's international status rose significantly. Chinese influence in Asian financial markets expanded dramatically. As global financial firms' exodus from London accelerated, COVID-19 struck, dealing an even bigger blow to the British economy. After Brexit, British politics fell into chaos, cycling through prime minister after prime minister. Economic policy lost consistency. Their inconsistent economic policies crushed even business investment appetite. Without automation investment, productivity can't rise. Without rising productivity, wages can't rise. A vicious cycle. Britain's economic fundamentals were weakening. In July 2024, the Conservative Party suffered crushing defeat in elections, ending 14 years in power. Keir Starmer's Labour Party won overwhelmingly and took office. But when they took power, Britain's fiscal deficit exceeded 4% of GDP. Government debt matched the size of the economy. Economic growth rate hovered around 1%. Contrary to expectations, even with the change of government, Labour couldn't find a clear economic breakthrough. Labour's approval ratings plummeted. Calling Britain's situation a collapse in 2026 would be an exaggeration. In 2025, Britain's per capita income is $57,000, similar to Germany and France, over 20 times higher than India. But the problem is the simultaneous decline in relative status and exposure of structural vulnerabilities. An empire that once commanded the world is now slowly sliding down from the upper ranks. By economic size, still the world's sixth largest, but influence and competitiveness have dramatically fallen. The core of Britain's economic collapse lies in economic structural imbalance. By abandoning manufacturing and depending solely on finance, Britain developed an economic structure constitutionally extremely vulnerable to external shocks, like Singapore. When events like the 2008 financial crisis or Brexit occurred, the entire economy staggered. This contrasts sharply with nations like Germany, Japan, and South Korea, where manufacturing and services maintain balance. Political short-termism is also a major cause. Politicians repeatedly made short-sighted choices, obsessed with immediate electoral victory rather than long-term national strategy. The Brexit referendum itself arose from political calculations to appease internal Conservative Party conflicts. Trying to resolve complex economic problems through a simple referendum was an irresponsible mistake, using matters determining national destiny as political tools. Also, failing to properly manage basic facilities like free healthcare and transportation infrastructure shook the very foundation of the economy, making high worker productivity difficult to expect. Public services aren't just welfare, they're core elements of economic competitiveness. Investment in robots and automation remained at the lowest level among developed nations, causing productivity improvement to stagnate. Without rising productivity, wages can't rise. Without rising wages, consumption can't increase, a vicious cycle. This contrasts with South Korea's active investment in manufacturing automation to increase productivity. Social integration failure produced the Brexit disaster. The wealth gap between London and provincial cities remained unsolved. This discontent is now again directed at immigrants, causing much conflict. The empire on which the sun would never set is fading into history's corner. Britain will shake even more violently in the face of the coming massive financial crisis wave. By abandoning manufacturing in the 1980s and betting everything on finance dependent on EU access, Britain set a precedent. Short-term profit justifies abandoning long-term industrial capacity. This gives other declining powers justification to hollow out their manufacturing bases in pursuit of financial services. Gives political leaders justification to sacrifice long-term national strategy for immediate electoral victories. Gives wealthy nations justification to exploit global access while abandoning the infrastructure and industries that built their prosperity. Britain, the empire that invented the Industrial Revolution, just proved you can lose everything by forgetting how to make things. The Brexit referendum wasn't the endgame, it was the consequence. Britain's decline didn't happen overnight, it took 40 years. From Thatcher's dismantling of manufacturing to Brexit's severing of European markets, each decision made economic sense in the moment, but together they destroyed the foundation of a 200-year empire. This isn't just Britain's story, it's the blueprint for how advanced economies hollow themselves out, choosing finance over factories, short-term gains over long-term capacity, political victories over structural strength. If you want to see how empires actually fall, not through war, but through 1,000 small choices that seem rational until it's too late, subscribe to Endgame Economics. Because the next crisis won't announce itself as a collapse. It will be sold as progress, as modernization, as efficiency. Until the day infrastructure fails, jobs disappear, and the empire realizes it no longer knows how to make anything at all. See the pattern. Stay ahead, stay ready.